I'm Janet.
And I'm Roger, and we want to welcome you to the sixth season of The Halfling and the Spaceman Journeys in Active Fandom. There are so many fantastic creators out there, and they all have their own stories about their personal journeys.
And we're here to bring you those stories and hopefully entertain and inspire you. And today we are talking with Tara Tai. They're an Asian American writer. Their love of video games and tabletop RPGs has led them to write their first novel, Single Player, which has just come out. Welcome, Tara.
Hi, I'm Tara, and I am super happy to be here. So thank you both.
Well, we're super happy to have you.
Yeah, Tara's hanging with the old nerds today.
Hey, I'm older than I look. I promise.
Okay.
Yeah, but still nowhere near us. So that's okay. I think we still have a few years on you, but that's okay. You'll get there one of these days.
Yeah, we were there when Nero fiddled while Rome burned. Yeah, me and Moses go way back.
Okay. Now that we have addressed the issue of us being old, let's go ahead and get started with why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm based out of Boston, where my day job is as a product manager for a big tech company. So not super creative in at least traditional sense. And then when I log off in the evenings, that's when the real fun begins. Usually drafting a novel. Oftentimes, once or twice a week, playing D&D, and then if I have any leftover free time, playing video games or reading, obviously the evergreen hobby. Grew up in Philadelphia, have been living in Boston for the last, I want to say 20 years actually. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Okay. All right. Very good. Well, what's your go-to video game?
Ooh, that is a hard question. It's tough because I'm such a narrative driven geek, I guess. Like I love narrative driven video games, and therefore I'm always moving forward because there's always new stories to consume and there's always new worlds to discover. I'd say the one that like still sticks with me after all these years remains Mass Effect,
Mhm.
made by BioWare. In the 20, I think it was 2008 through 2014 or something like that. I'm getting that wrong. So Mass Effect is a lovely one. The Last of Us, which is now an HBO series and has got
Mhm.
a lot of mainstream traction. I think that's just a masterpiece in storytelling, in plumbing the depths of human love and rage and grief and vengeance. I just think that's such a great story. So those two are probably the ones that rise to the top of my list.
Quick video game question. Have you ever played What Became of Edith Finch?
Yes. So, quick aside, I believe, if I recall correctly, that game is in first person. And I might be getting it wrong. I might be getting my wires crossed, but I'm 80% sure that game is in first person. And I get extremely motion sick when I play first person narrative games, which is such a heartbreak because there are so many good ones out there. Indiana Jones just came out. Fallout is famously first person. So I've played it. I've played it for a couple hours, and then I decided that my physiological health was more important than
It's a
finishing it.
it's a great story,
Absolutely.
but yeah, absolutely. It's like we have some friends who can't play VR because they get motion sick,
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
and you've
I
not
did go
lived
to
it.
Wikipedia afterwards though and read the plot, and I was like, "Oh man, I really wish I could have experienced this firsthand."
Well, I was going to say, you haven't experienced Skyrim until you played it in VR.
VR doesn't make me motion sick, so
Oh,
I'm
okay.
I'm looking forward to the VR revolution to really hit us.
Ah, that's kind of interesting that VR doesn't make you motion sickness, but the first player video games
I
do.
think it's something about like the immersiveness where
Yeah.
you have the headset, you turn your head and that's actually where your viewport changes.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas first person, you're still sort of like sending that signal to your thumb to nudge the joystick to the left-hand side.
Right. Well, and the only time I've ever gotten motion sick in VR is when I downgraded my video card. I had a 2080 Ti, and the liquid cooler broke open on the CPU and got all over my video card. So
Oh,
I downgraded to an Asus card, and I had to scale back my Skyrim settings because I was getting physically sick.
no. Mhm.
Never had
Yeah,
happened before with the 2080 Ti.
got it. I only understood, frankly, maybe 40% of what you just said, but it sounds heartbreaking.
All right. So are you a console gamer or a PC gamer?
Yeah, and probably based on my lack of comprehension just now, you can tell I am a console gamer. Yeah, I'm a console gamer. I play PS5. I play Switch games. Uh, not really out of sort of any allegiance to any particular console. It's just sort of PS5 has a lot of, well, PlayStation has a lot of exclusives, and it's just how I've grown.
Mhm. Mhm.
I don't want to have like 5 consoles sitting in my house. So.
Yeah, my brother has like 5 consoles sitting in his bedroom, but they're all Nintendo consoles of various generations, and he still plays all of them with his grandson.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. But he has a good excuse for that,
He
it's
does.
the grandson,
It's a
so,
bonding thing. Yeah, it's a bonding thing.
cut him a little
There's
slack.
a bated breath moment when you like boot up a SNES for the first time in 5 years, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, is this gonna still work?" Because you need like a special adapter for the right white, yellow cable, and when it works, you're like, "Yes!" So
And then you smell the horrible smell of ozone, and you're
Yeah.
fried.
we don't think about that. We don't think about that.
Oh, so Havling, where are we?
We were at you asked
Oh, whoa,
me.
whoa, 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 whoa.
We were
Okay,
at
well,
you
we've
asked
already kind of started talking about video games, so let's switch over to TTRPGs a little bit. So TTRPGs, that's one of our great things that we love.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, if right now underneath the computer that we're looking at you on is a copy of Werewolf the Apocalypse, because I needed to stand the computer up just a little bit more. So tell us about how you got into TTRPGs and what you enjoy about them.
Gosh, I could take up the whole hour talking about TTRPGs and how essential and how every kid everywhere in the world should have access to them and should play them. I got into TTRPGs as an adult. My brother got me a copy of the Player's Handbook in my mid 20s. My brother's a big gamer. He's the person who got me into video games and fantasy novels and sci-fi novels and all things
Mhm.
nerdy, geeky, and dorky. He got me a Player's Handbook because I really liked acting in high school, and I didn't really get a chance to act very much in high school because I was too busy being a nerd and taking all the tests. Um, I actually I played like a mini campaign in my mid 20s, I want to say, and then I was like, that was pretty fun, but it's also kind of a commitment. And I don't think I really like I had a good group, but I didn't really gel with them totally like wholly. It was like a positive but medium to neutral experience. So then I put it aside for a couple years, and the pandemic hit, as it did for everyone. Um, and I don't even know why, and I think it's funny that life's biggest pivots sometimes come out of left field, and you don't know, like there's no like major catalyst or awakening moment, but something compelled me just to start Critical Role Campaign 3. I had never watched Campaign 1, I had never watched Campaign 2. I knew a lot of the cast from video games because I play a lot of video games and they do a lot of voice work. And just randomly, I was like, let me give this a shot. And then I don't, it was probably some like alchemy combination of like the pandemic, loneliness, wanting to connect with people. I was like, this is incredible. This is such like I can't believe I haven't been doing this my entire life. So the pandemic was when I really got into Dungeons and Dragons 5e. And nowadays, I'm both part of an online campaign with a bunch of writing friends where I'm a player, and I also DM a weekly in person game, which is probably the most miraculous thing to have ever happened, where we actually get together on a weekly basis, despite, adult jobs and
Mhm.
responsibilities. And that campaign's been going on for about a year and a half. So yeah, D&D is and TTRPGs were at large incredible. I could wax poetic about it. Math, improv, social skills, strategic thinking, planning, empathy building. It's just, I really truly believe the world would be a better place if everyone just tried it once.
I tend to agree with you on that. I actually had a therapist tell me one time that it was psychologically good for me to because I mentioned that I played RPGs and she was like, "Oh, good, keep doing that because that's a good thing." Um,
Oh, and you should tell Tara about the I just want to kill something day.
oh yeah. Yeah, they're really good for, for acting out tendencies that you wouldn't really want to act out in your, in your actual life because, there are laws and so forth.
Consequences, yeah. You can't really, you can't really manhandle your coworkers
No,
like you could
no.
a
But
bunch of
but
bandits in the game.
but he's right. There was one Saturday when we were gonna start generating characters for a game, and I had had a really bad week, and I came in to the GM's house, and we were talking, and he said, "Well, what kind of character do you wanna play?" I said, I just wanna create somebody that can kill people." And he was like, "Okay." So
Out of curiosity, what class did you end up choosing?
well, this wasn't actually D&D. This was,
Got it.
was it,
I think it was GURPS.
GURPS? Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a
But
GURPS.
you were kind of a barbarian, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think I was some sort of just some brute. I can't even remember the particulars of it now. I just remember that I just want something that can kill people. I just remember that, and, it's a good stress reliever.
It is. You just
It
throw some dice and you take the anger out of
yeah,
the dice.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. I think it helps you learn, like, the types of characters you come up with helps you teach things about yourself as well. Like, weirdly, every character I've ever played in a campaign where I've been a player has been obsessed with, like, the afterlife and what happens. And I'm like slowly starting to realize, like, that is something that is, really preoccupies my subconscious apparently. So
huh. Well, that's interesting thing to know about yourself or to find out about yourself.
yeah,
That's
or even like sort of externally, if I view sort of characters that like certain uh TTRPG players on web series play, a lot of times there's like a through line where I'm like, oh, this character, this individual, her characters are always about finding her mother or whatever. So anyway, sorry to drag us to an adjacency.
that's fine. That's fine.
No,
Uh,
because I don't know about you, but a lot of the people we've talked to who play TTRPGs, that also influences their writing.
Yeah.
So, not something we've really planned to talk about, but have you found that to be the case? Have you had your gaming life bleed over into your writing life?
Oh, interesting. I don't think single player is about two game devs who come together to work on the same narrative RPG, where the main conflict is whether they should introduce love interests into this video game. And the reason that they're being asked to introduce love interests into this video game is because the powers that be, the people who are funding the game's development, believe that adding love interests will attract female gamers and sort of like swell their fan base. And that's seen as like not a good enough reason for the art from one of the characters' perspective. And then the other character is a really big fan of romance in video games, and she sort of really wants to sort of take the suggestion and implement it. In the book, they do end up at a D&D table together, Um, and so in that sense, absolutely, video games, TTRPGs have just a very substantively impacted my writing. I think one thing on a meta level that TTRPGs has been really good for me as a writer is writing is a terrible hobby. It's so hard, and sometimes you get stuck on the wildest things. Like you just need these two characters to leave the restaurant and hail a cab, but for some reason, it's so hard to get that scene to progress. And the wonderful thing about TTRPGs as a GM is I have a lot of experience narrating and like having tight control over time and space. And so when I do get stuck, like in front of a laptop putting words down in a Word document, I like to sit back and say like, well, if I had players in front of me, how would I narrate this? How would I paint the scene? And that has been something that's been helpful for me in unlocking sometimes when I have writer's block, not all the time.
That's a great technique, actually, and I think that would be very useful. It's, yeah, I hadn't really thought about that perspective, but yeah, that works. Good, good. Um, well, so lots of writers start early on. I mean, I think we all had to write stories at various levels, in grade school and on. But when did you start deciding to seriously start writing?
Yeah, a lot of starts and stops, frankly. I wanted to be an author from a very young age. I did a lot of writing growing up. My brother, well, we had tiger parents in the traditional sense. So after we were done with our classical music, our violin, our piano, our math practice and all that stuff, when we finally had free time for the day, my brother would scoot off to the NES and play video games, and I would scoot off to the computer, which still had dial up internet, and sort of like write. Uh, um, I don't. I think like by the time I hit high school, it became more of a pipe dream because my parents were just so focused on getting me into a good school, which meant taking SATs and all the AP classes and getting ahead as much as possible. And then when I actually did get into college, it was a continuation of that rat race of study something in STEM, so you can get a good job. So I didn't really. I took a year off right after undergrad when I was 22 years old, and I lived in Beijing for a year, which was just a really cool experience that I lucked into. Where I was able to like take some time between graduating college and like entering the workforce. And I was writing a historical novel at the time, which is very different from rom com, very different from the fantasy that I wrote growing up. That novel was meant to sort of research my family tree and the individuals who got left behind, for lack of a more delicate turn of phrase, during the Cultural Revolution in 1948, 1949. Well, the Cultural Revolution was a little bit after that, but during like Mao's sort of takeover, Mao Zedong's takeover of China. So I did that, and then it never really got off the ground. I think I was a little bit too young. I was 22 years old, trying to write a very serious piece of historical fiction, and I entered the workforce. And then when I was about 30, 31, my partner was like, you've been talking about writing a book for your whole life. It's time to get back to it. And so I did when I was about 30, and probably right when I turned 31 was when the pandemic hit, and suddenly I had all this time, so much time in the world to just sit at home. I had so many like I'm very introverted by nature, but suddenly had a very good excuse to sit at home all the time and just write. And there were also a lot of writers coming online in 2020, obviously, since people were looking for community online. So that's probably 2020 was probably the turning point for me. That's when I was like, I should really give this a go. And then single player, the my debut didn't actually sell until 2023. So it was still a couple of years and a couple of manuscripts before I turned into, I guess, what you could consider a professional writer.
Mhm.
there are so many people we know that are writers, and very few of them do it exclusively. Occasionally, we meet somebody who does it, exclusively. So,
Yep. I feel like during this whole journey, the one thing I've been parroting is support your creatives because stories are what make the world go round, and writers and creators are not nearly compensated enough for the important work we do to make, you know, doing the 9 to 5 worthwhile.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, the I was just gonna say the one thing that somebody had put out there was that, you know, most of the time you have 2 jobs. You have one that pays the bills and one that gives the thrills. So, I think that's very true with writers. There's very few writers that can really make a good living at it. You have to get to a certain level before before you can quit that day job and that
So,
security.
Halfling, before we start interviewing folks, should we start every episode by going, "Surf's up, dude, cowabunga"?
No, I don't
Oh,
think so.
okay, okay, okay.
I don't think
We
so.
said it gives the thrills. I mean, yeah.
Hey, I got that reference, so I don't mind.
Alright, Spaceman.
Spaceman.
You take it away.
Talking about oh, we're talking about RPGs again. That's my favorite topic.
It is.
So, Tara, you mentioned D&D. Have you ever played anything else besides D&D?
Yes, this is such an embarrassing is the connection okay? Good. This is such an embarrassing question for me to answer because I want so badly for the answer to be yes. Because I know there are wonderful TTRPGs out there, and I want to play them. It's just that time is such a rate limiter, and D&D 5e is such a well-known rule set. And TTRPGs is it's complicated, right? Because like not only do you have to be as the GM, you have to be sort of like willing to learn a new rule set. You also have to have players who know the new rule set or are at least willing to learn, and then you have to like bring them along. So the answer to your question is no, but I am super excited to. I mean, Monster Hearts has been on my list for a long time. I've been wanting to play Kids on Bikes, Kids on Brooms, whatever you want to call it, for a long time. I have a campaign idea for Candela Obscura that is just taking up space in the back of my mind. So I would love to. It's just time is a finicky resource.
Time is a finicky resource.
Absolutely. Yes, for sure.
Yeah, if the spaceman could, he'd be running like 5 different campaigns.
Uh,
If the spaceman could.
yeah, finding the players is a challenge though,
Yeah, our players
especially
keep dying on us for some reason.
well, or moving away,
Oh yeah, a few of them
Don't just
moved
say
away. Yeah.
dying.
Yeah.
They move away too. I mean, we are playing in one virtual game with a GM who's in
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So, uh,
1 hour a month.
yeah, yeah. Well, 2 hours a month. Woohoo!
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing how much you can get done,
Yep.
/S
Yeah.
in an hour a month.
I mean, I think you got it right though. You need to have a consistent schedule. I mean, you really do. You need to have everybody commit to a consistent schedule to keep it really going.
Yeah.
Keep it fresh. Um, so did your current group of players that you're actually gaming with in person, did you guys have any trouble coming up with that, or did everybody just kind of say, "Oh yeah, we need to do this"?
I truly every Thursday I thank my lucky stars that I lucked into this group because the way it came about was that in 2022 it was at this point I was frankly, just candidly, extremely depressed. It was the tail end of the pandemic. I had written at that point 2 books that had died on submission, which means that all the publishers and editors that my agent had submitted them to had passed on the books, and therefore they were dead in the water and they weren't going to get traditionally published. And I sort of like popped my head up and I was like, telling stories is great. I can't tie my sense of accomplishment or self-worth to an industry that I have no control over. And that's when I was like, I need something consistent where I can do what I love, which is tell stories without, being subjected to the whims of this industry, which is so luck dependent and so sort of like vibes and timing dependent, right? So I went on this app called Lex, which is a social media app for queer people. It's not a very popular social media app, but I live in Boston and there's a good number of people on it. And I just sent out like a Hail Mary post of like, I'm a DM, I'm looking for anywhere from 4 to 6 players. I live in this neighborhood. I want to meet once a week. I want to play a narrative driven game. Like power gamers are welcome as long as you know that the story comes first. Uh, Message me, and I got maybe 15 pings, which was a lot.
Wow.
And
Ah, yeah. Wow.
and then I felt bad because then I had to, not interview people, but like message people and sort of people down. And I don't know how I got so lucky. Very candidly, we met once at my place with my partner, and we gelled really well. One of them had never played any sort of TTRPG before, and she was like, "This is weird." So I have a piece of paper, and I just ask you questions while we all sit here and hallucinate together. And I was like, "Yep, that's right. That's what we're doing." And yeah, the rest is history. We've been playing pretty much every week, every other week since mid 2022. So
That makes
Nice.
the spaceman very happy to hear that.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. That's great. That's great.
really lucked out. Mid 2023. I got my years wrong, but yeah.
Well, there's something so uplifting about being with the group in person that, you're sitting together and you're having that time together to not just socialize, but to play and, it's just it's a great experience.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
we used to have big potlucks every time we had gaming. So everybody would bring a dish and then we would play for like 3 hours, then we'd eat dinner, and then we play for another 3 hours.
Yeah.
So, but those were a few years ago.
Yeah.
A
You
few
That's
a few years ago. But still, it was a lot of fun, and, everybody could cook.
Yeah.
If
no,
you
that's one of the best things about the group we have. It's uh like there are no non-aligned dietary restrictions, and we all like the same snacks, and we all like fast food, and we all like pizza, and I'm like, this is great. Like I don't have to like order a specific gluten, nothing against people who are gluten free medically or otherwise, but I don't have to like order a specific pizza topping for that one person. It's like so good.
Well, that does make it a little easier, doesn't it? Um, well, so single player is your first novel that's been published. Um, and I get the idea that you're working on others. So is your goal to become a professional writer and make that your main career? Or do you plan on hanging on to your day job and just considering this a hobby?
Yeah, that's a tough question. If anyone at my day job is listening to this eventually, I obviously want to hang on to my day job. Just with that disclaimer out there. No, but in all, without any facetiousness, I would love to be a full time author. I think there are stories that one can only tell when one has the mental space and fortitude to tell them. And for example, I've never really tackled a piece of fantasy, since I did when I was, like, 6. But, like, as an adult, I think the standards I would want to hold myself to in terms of world building would be so high that it's not something I think I could do, in the hours between 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. on a weeknight. And then same with literary fiction. I actually read a lot of literary fiction. And I feel like literary fiction tends to be so, a little slower paced and so contemplative. And I don't know if I could really tackle that as like a off the side of my desk, uh, I guess off the side of my desk project. On the flip side, I think like writing is you write to write about people, and stories are at the end of the day about people. Even stories about animals are about people somehow. And working a job connects me to people, and I'm so introverted by nature that I'd be worried if I were lucky to become a full-time writer, I'd actually just slowly recede into myself, that I'd lose touch with the very humanity that I'm trying to write about. So I'm of two minds about it. Either way, I don't have to decide because those levels of success are so far away from me right now that it's not a moral conflict I need to grapple with.
Well, Tara, as a writer, do you participate with any writers groups?
Yeah, absolutely. During the pandemic, I found a number of groups online. Uh, I find writing groups. This not very good joke I like to tell is what do writer groups, TTRPG parties, and agents have in common? Uh, uh, which the answer is a bad TTRPG party, a bad agent, a bad writing group is worse than no TTRPG party, writing group or agent. So I'm very lucky again to have like a very strong writing group. And these are people I connected with via social media, and then we eventually sort of just formed a cohort. And we don't meet regularly, but when one of us has something to share, we just ping each other the manuscript, and then we hop on Zoom to chat about it. And it's a pretty diverse group of authors. So we have a playwright, we have two YA authors, and both like one is contemporary YA, the other one's it's fantasy or urban fantasy YA. And we have one person writing speculative stuff, another person squarely writing Adrian Tchaikovsky esque sci-fi, and then there's me who I write nerdy, geeky romance. So it's a pretty diverse group, but I think that's actually one of our strengths because we're able to see different facets of a story that someone else just operating squarely within your genre would see.
Well, that's good because we've heard from other writers that sometimes they've had negative experiences with writers groups. And I think that it probably just depends on the group itself and what the goal of the group is. If you're or maybe not the goal of the group, but you have people that just will tell you that, "Oh, this was great." And you wanna know, "Well, why did you think it was great?"
Mhm.
What was so great about it? Did you like the dialogue? Did you like the way I portrayed this relationship? Or the other side of the coin, which is, "Well, this sucked." Okay, well, what about it? Why do you
Hey,
say that?
Halfling, I tell you what, if anybody thinks that the spaceman is either great or not so great, that I am willing to listen to them tell me this as long as they buy me a beverage at the convention. You buy me a beverage at the convention or maybe dinner, a pizza's good. I will listen to whatever you have to say.
That's
He's
fair. I'll
saying
keep that in mind the next time I go to a
that he's saying that he can be bought is what he's saying.
No, no, my
Um,
time, my time can be bought. I can't
oh,
be bought. I'm
his
not for sale.
okay, his time can be bought, okay. My,
Yeah.
uh,
Yes, I belong to Hedrick the hedgehog.
yes. Uh, but no, I think it really depends on the people in the group, I guess, and the type of feedback that they're willing to give you. Um, because you need something that's constructive, something that you can actually work with. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I also feel like it's important to find people who are in the same place in their craft as you. Like, if I were to like, people tend to give feedback, myself very much included, that mirrors what they are working on in their own craft, because that's the stuff that they pay attention to the most. And
Mhm.
so if someone's working on removing adverbs from their writing, which is, a common piece of advice given to people who are starting out for the first time, then what they're going to focus on is how many adverbs you have, not, is your characterization of your protagonist as like an arc throughout the story really working? So finding people who are in the same place in their craft development, I think can actually help a lot.
As long as people don't attack my buddy the M dash. You start
Yeah.
messing with the M dash and, Spaceman's gonna be ill.
No, I will go to war for the M dash personally.
Okay, so Tara is a fan of the M dash. Okay.
All right-minded people are.
Duly noted.
Yeah.
Uh, uh,
So, Tara, how would, sorry. So, Tara, how would you describe your writing style?
Ooh, this was a hard enough question that I actually brainstormed it ahead of time.
Okay, okay.
Um, Gosh, this is a really hard one. Um, I would say I don't even know what a writing style is, but I'd say that one of the things that I really love when I read is character-driven fiction, and I sort of alluded to how I read a lot of literary fiction in my high school years and my 20s. And for a long time, my favorite authors were people like Elizabeth Strout. And I can get really obsessive about interiority and how this maelstrom of emotions can be happening under the surface, even if it's, a very simple scene like Mrs. Dalloway deciding to buy the flowers herself, right? In Mrs. Dalloway. Uh so it's interesting because I think the genres I write, and even as a GM, like romance and TTRPGs tend to have more propulsive, action forward, plot centric storytelling. But I have a great love for zooming in on characters' interiority, and you see a little bit of this with single player, where a lot of it is Kat, the protagonist, is a huge fan of video games, as I previously mentioned, and she tries to apply video game logic to all her real life relationships. So I really enjoyed writing the scenes where I like sort of magnified her brain trying to deconstruct a social interaction into like a menu of four dialogue options.
Now, is she constantly sending other people on fetch quest?
Kat refers to herself as an NPC, not as a PC. Like she doesn't think she's even like the protagonist of her own story. That's something that she works on over the course of the book. So usually she's the one doing fetch quests for other people.
Oh,
I think I'm a little sad by that.
well,
I mean, it comes full circle though, because if you think about it, the protagonist or the hero is the person who does the fetch quests. So while she thinks of herself as not important and therefore she's doing the fetch quest, that actually puts her back in the hero seat.
Okay, there you go. There you go. Well, that would be why you're the writer,
life
and
is just
we're not.
one giant fetch quest after another halfling. You know, we go to the grocery store every weekend. That's a fetch quest. Do we get experience points for it? I don't know, but I don't think I've leveled up in a while.
It's one of those things where like the more you do this particular fetch quest over and over again, the less experience you get for it.
I think that must be it.
Yeah,
I've been adulting so long, I no longer get experience for adulting.
no. Moving on.
Moving on. So, conversely, with that same sort of question in mind, what do you think makes a good story? Either from yourself or from an author you're reading.
Yeah, this is the other really hard question that was sent along ahead of
2 for
time.
2, yay.
Yes. This is such a tricky question because I came up with an answer and then I was like, I'm not sure I wrote a really good story with single player. um, but I think, oh gosh, it's so ephemeral. It's so hard to define. It's like trying to define like love or the color blue. There's
Well
just
well, just imagine you've just read the best book that you personally have ever read before. You know, you've just finished the best book you've ever read. Why do you think that's the best book you've ever read?
yeah. I think the books that stick with me bring something new to the table. And I'm not sure if that's what makes them good or that's just what makes them salient in my memory. But I think about the books I've read in the last 5 years. Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky, right? Like rapidly evolved, extremely intelligent spiders. Or I think about Gideon the Ninth, which was just unhinged necromancers in space. What a wild premise. Or I think about The Traitor Baru Cormorant, which is by Seth Dickinson. Beautiful book, made me cry. But I think what was like really fascinating was take this fantasy setting, but instead of like swords and shields and sort of like Game of Thrones esque clashes, you've got monetary policy and like currency manipulation. And I think about Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin, and that book is squarely literary fiction, but like the depth of love between two platonic friends, right? The two main characters in that book. Like we don't see platonic relationships portrayed between a man and a woman very commonly in media. Like all four of those books have stuck with me over the last 5 years because they brought something new to their genre. Like a either was like a new setting, a new way of introducing conflict. So that's probably what I'd say is like for me personally, what makes it something a good book. But yeah, I don't know if that was a satisfactory answer.
I mean, I think that's a fine answer. There's no right or wrong to the answer, and I think you could ask 10 people the same question and get 10 different answers. So, um, yeah. So, yeah, as the saying goes, the heart wants what the heart wants, and you know,
My heart wants a pizza.
or we can get pizza.
All right.
Always wants pizza. I support.
Oh, yes, the heart wants what the heart wants. My heart wants pizza.
But like I said, you can get pizza.
Well, we can't do that right now because we're in the middle of an interview.
Talking about.
All right.
We should get back to that. So, what challenges have you faced along the way? You mentioned that the first couple of books that you tried to get published, you weren't successful with, but now you've got one out. But what has been the most challenging thing for you?
It's just it's such an essential yet time consuming and oftentimes hopeless hobby, right? Like you spend nights, weeks, months, even years in front of a computer. You sign off of work. You don't spend time with your partner. You beg out of walking the dog. You decide not to cook dinner. You decide not to cook something healthy for dinner. You get takeout instead. You don't go to dinner out with your friends. You skip that movie at the theater. You decide not to watch that TV show that someone recommended to you because you have a story to tell. And that story may never get told, and like you might burn out. Like I've done that multiple times. There's for every manuscript that I finish, there's two more that are unfinished. They're like, lying fallow at 30,000 words. And even if you do finish, it might not sell, and even if it does sell, it might not sell well. And just having the perseverance to do it anyway, like with that little tendril of hope that one day someone will pick it up and say, let me give this a shot. Let me put 10, 15 hours of time sitting on a couch into reading this in the hopes that they'll enjoy it. They might not even tell you, but you're hoping that one day someone will enjoy it and that you'll have impacted them in some small minuscule way, right? That's that's so hard. It's like the amount of reward at the end of the tunnel is so minuscule, and I think, like, that's why a lot of people say you have to enjoy the process itself, but the process is also kind of awful. Like, for every good day of writing, I have 9 days of just beating my head against the wall and, again, trying to get these 2 characters to leave the restaurant and call a cab. Yeah, I don't that was probably really depressing, but again, it's also essential, so we do it anyway. We pick ourselves up and we do it anyway.
Well, I think that's good for potential writers out there to hear. I mean, that's the nitty-gritty of it. It's not all a bed of roses, and there are gonna be lots of challenges. There are gonna be times when you probably feel like you wanna quit, or is it worth it? And,
Oh,
but then, like you said, you pick yourself up and you do it anyway, because it's the thing that you enjoy, and the thing you ultimately want to do is tell the story. Um, but, so kudos for getting up and doing it anyway.
Just me and my delusion, really. Sitting at
I think you and a lot of other writers out there probably have the same delusion, so don't feel signaled out, you're just one of the many out there,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
yeah, it's only imposter syndrome until your publisher writes you that first check.
Mhm.
If you've gotten that first check, you are no longer an imposter.
Uh,
There's a great quote in it's a romance book. It's How to End a Love Story. It's early on in the first 20 pages or so, so this is not a spoiler. I think it's like in the first 3 pages. But the main character asks a much more successful author, or much more successful creative, at least, and she was like, "At what point does imposter syndrome go away?" And then the more successful creative says, "Well, at some point, it just becomes unseemly," which I kind of
I
I
like
like
that.
that. Yeah,
I do,
I
yeah.
like that.
I like that. Uh, well, okay, so you've talked about the biggest challenge, but what's been the biggest surprise for you?
meeting people, which is great because meeting people is what sort of feeds the creative well. So meeting people like you two, meeting other writers, mostly on social media, reconnecting with old friends, people that have come out of the woodwork, just to say congratulations or say, "Hey, I found a copy of your book in my local bookstore." Just 3 days ago, this woman I met while I was backpacking in Australia and New Zealand. Um, must have been 15 years ago. I met her 15 years ago in Australia and New Zealand. We met at a hostel. We had beers together, and we went to, like, I don't know, some beach together, and then we added each other on Facebook. And, like, since then, I haven't really, like, you say happy birthday on Facebook once every 5 years when you log in on the right day. But that's about it. She's in London, or she's in, sorry, Leeds. She's in England,
Mhm.
and I haven't seen her in so long. She posted a picture holding my book, and I was like, "That's nuts.
Ah.
That's nuts," right? And, um,
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
yeah,
awesome. Yeah.
Uh, well,
that's been the great thing, just being able to connect with people, even people who haven't, like, read the book, but especially people who have and, enjoyed it, or found nuggets in it that, really resonated with them. That's been really beautiful.
well, do you go to conventions at all?
I do.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, PAX East, because I'm in Boston, and PAX East is in Boston, is usually
Mhm.
the one I hit up. I've been to cons down in Atlanta. San Diego Comic Con is a pipe dream for me. I would love to go there someday. New York Comic Con is a common one for me to hit up as well. So yeah.
And now, is this just as an attendee, or have you gone to conventions with your book
As a creative
Oh,
pro,
as a
yeah.
creator?
yes, no, not yet. that would be also a new milestone unlocked, new achievement unlocked, new trophy. To put it in video game terms, the book just came out January 7th, so a little over a month ago. So
Mhm.
I had the opportunity to go to a con. I'm not sure that it would be. I mean, my the book is like, I think it's a quiet book in the grand scheme of things. It's not fourth wing. It's not record shattering. So yeah, but if the opportunity presented itself, heck yeah, I would absolutely do it.
Well, no, I mean, you were just talking about meeting people and, so many of the creators that we have talked to, some of their biggest connections have been from going to conventions.
It's how we started this podcast.
Yeah, actually, how we started this podcast, we met another podcaster, when we were at a convention, and we had breakfast together, and we were talking, and we talked about the idea of doing a podcast, trying to figure out what we wanted to do, and he basically kicked us in our rears and said, "Do it. Just do something,
Do
get
something.
out there. You need to
Get
do
off your
something."
get off your butts,
And,
you old
um
folks.
and on the way home, we talked it out and kinda came up with the idea for the show, because we love talking to people in general, but we love talking to geeks and people that create, so this was perfect for us,
Yeah.
uh
And hey, I'm super glad that that happened. That y'all just did it.
Oh,
Well, sometimes that's what it takes is just doing it. You gotta, swallow your fear and swallow the the what if I fail or what if I don't get, this or that from it, and just do it. Just if it's the thing you wanna do, you do it, right?
if I get one person at a convention to buy me pizza, then I've succeeded, and that's already
Eat the
happened.
pizza
No,
again.
it's already happened. That's already happened. So, I've already hit my first measure of success.
Yeah.
Who bought you pizza?
I can't remember who it was. It was one of the room parties we went to.
Oh, okay.
But I'm just saying they didn't specifically buy the spaceman a pizza. They gave the spaceman pizza, which I think counts.
Yeah.
Okay.
That
I'm
absolutely
gonna I'm gonna count that as a victory.
yeah.
I'm gonna put that in the win column.
Okay.
All right. Well,
We're stealing your thunder.
we
I
are. We are.
apologize.
But this is
Oh,
an
no, I love
opportunity.
this.
This is an
I can talk
opportunity.
about pizza and conventions all day long. No problem.
Well, let's have a pizza convention. And it would have to be in New York because New Yorkers swear that their pizza is the best pizza. Although I'm a big fan of the Chicago deep dish, not so much of the Detroit deep dish, but the Chicago deep dish is pretty good.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But PizzaCon,
Anyway,
I'll be the MC. I'll MC the ceremonies
for PizzaCon.
for PizzaCon. That's
Okay.
right.
All right. We'll send you
Well,
an invitation.
we'll put that on the list of projects that we're doing as the Halfling and the Spaceman. PizzaCon.
Let me know. Yeah. Send me an invite.
All
But
right, spaceman, get
all
back on track.
all joking aside, Tara, we've really enjoyed talking to you, and we want our listeners to know where they can find out more about you and about your book.
Yeah, you can find me online. Probably exclusively. You can find me at my website, taratai.com. That's just taratai.com. Or if you want to brave the muddy waters of social media, you can find me on Blue Sky, also at taratai.com conveniently, or on Instagram at a much longer handle, which I will pronounce once. Tarza Parza Gaga Pan. I set it up back in college, never thinking that I would use it for business purposes, but here we are.
Well, we'll do our best to get all that in the show notes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Uh,
we can follow you on Blue Sky.
yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And I'll follow you back.
Uh, well, listen, we have had a wonderful time talking to you, and we really appreciate you taking the time to join us. It's been a lot of fun, and we appreciate you putting up with us.
And our silly shenanigans.
Uh,
Hey, the
and
best
and
TTRPG campaigns are about silly shenanigans, so I'm here for it.
Maybe we
uh,
need to come up with the podcast RPG.
there you go. Uh, but, especially with all the technical difficulties we had to start with, so we appreciate
Darn you,
every staying
Squadcast.
yeah, you hanging in there till we get it resolved. But, again, we appreciate you taking the time to join us, and we have really had a ball talking to you tonight.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. And we want to thank all our listeners for tuning in today. And we hope that you've enjoyed and become inspired by today's guest, Tara Tai. We want to give everyone a huge thank you and shout out for joining us. And this is the Spaceman for the Halfling and the Spaceman podcast. Over and out.